preparing. So there are certain basic substantive and procedural laws that you have to be thorough with no matter what. Let's say even if there aren't questions on Bharatiya Nagarik Suraksha Sanhita in your written paper, there will be questions in your interview.
EXIM Bank is one exam that has 100% descriptive paper. If we talk about RBI Legal, majorly is again descriptive. Out of 150, 120 is descriptive actually from the legal paper. In that case, how was your approach different, and how did you go ahead preparing for a descriptive paper vis-a-vis another paper which may have the same syllabus, but the way they ask is very different?
Actually started preparing again after leaving my job. Since my goal was very clear that I had to prepare for SEBI. So in SEBI also there is a section where they ask descriptive questions.
Right.
Ma'am, I am immensely grateful for ixamBee because after leaving my job, I was starting from the scratch again. It had been almost 2 years of gap from law school to coming back, like to study again, to start preparing again. And I desperately needed a structure.
The problem comes when people misinterpret. Like in legal, it can be very dangerous to misinterpret the law. In the same manner, the mentor's advice, if misinterpreted, can be very, very dangerous.
So one key to clearing any exam that you're appearing for, I think this is one thing which will set you apart from the crowd, because ma'am, any center which I went to, there were thousands and thousands of children appearing for these exams, and it was the exam centers are the most intimidating part because everyone looks so well prepared. But
hello everyone, welcome to ixamBee. Today with me is Shubhangi Singh, who has cleared the EXIM Bank Management Trainee from the legal stream. Many, many congratulations, Shubhangi.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Shubhangi, for taking time to talk to us today. And this is going to be a very, very interesting conversation because EXIM Bank's selection process, while it includes a combination of written exam and the interview, like any other exam, but it is a little different. So we'll talk about it in detail. Before we start, Shubhangi, if you can tell a little about your background, please.
Sure, ma'am. My name is Shubhangi Singh. I am from Lucknow, Uttar Pradesh. So I did my entire schooling from Lucknow itself. And after that, I did my law from Campus Law Center, Delhi University. After completing my 3-year degree in law from there, I got placed in KPMG India, wherein I worked for almost 2 years in the Forensic Investigations Department. After working for 2 years in consulting, the urge to work in the legal domain was still there with me. So after working for 2 years, I realized that I've had good enough of exposure. And that's when I left my job and I started preparing for primarily regulatory bodies exam. Okay. So I was basically preparing for SEBI grade A, and I also gave PFRDA grade A as well. Meanwhile, EXIM Bank gave out their notification as well. The syllabus being very similar to that of PFRDA and SEBI, I decided to give it an attempt. And with God's grace and luckily, I cleared the exam.
Great, Shubhangi. And yes, God's grace, and I'm sure a lot of your own hard work and preparation, and that's what we will delve on in this conversation.
Sure.
So, Shubhangi, like you mentioned, that you primarily had started out with regulatory bodies in your mind, and the preparation for those helped you take, look at the exam notification also when it came out. So first question is, what kind of syllabus is there in the EXIM Bank? And then we'll talk about the difference in the pattern and how you approached it maybe.
So ma'am, this year, the 2025 and 2026 cycle, there was a new syllabus. So earlier the focus was on Companies Act, very limited sections, not the entire act itself. In the notification itself, they would mention the exact chapters, what they're going to ask for. The main focus earlier, prior to 2025-26 cycle, was on banking laws, RBI Act, POSH Act, RTI Act. However, this year in the 2025-26 cycle, there were new additions as well, like this SEBI Act, Depositories Act, SACRA Act. So this time, there were more additions to the syllabus as compared to the previous one. So that sort of gave me a confidence boost, since I was already preparing for SEBI grade A, and securities law form a great part of the syllabus there as well. So that's when I decided that I will definitely go for EXIM Bank as well.
Right. And when you said like these were the additions, so securities law primarily was never the major part of any exam, but it's
Right.
definitely the addition. So, but we did continue to have the common laws like constitution, the criminal
Yes, yes.
laws, the civil laws,
Correct.
contract
So
laws.
all the basic law, contract law, specifically fact, jurisprudence, tort law. So all of these basic acts, which form the part one of SEBI Grade A, which
Hmm.
are mainly asked in phase one,
Please.
were all there. And in this time, the from the syllabus of SEBI Grade A part two, certain topics were also added in the syllabus of EXIM Bank.
Okay.
So it was a vast, very exhaustive, long list of syllabus.
Right, right. So uh, basically, if you had not been preparing for SEBI or PFRDA in that manner, the syllabus could have felt daunting for a student who may have first time
Correct.
approached EXIM Bank.
Correct.
Okay, so I think preparation of various exams does help in some manner when
Yes, ma'am.
notifications come out
So
and you can see overlaps there.
right. So, what I believe is that if you're preparing for a legal exam, let's say, not
Mhm.
even a regulatory body or a banking body, let's say if you're preparing, so there are certain basic substantive and procedural laws that you have to be thorough with no matter what. Let's
Mhm.
say, even if there aren't questions on Bharatiya Nagarik Suraksha Sanhita in your written paper, there will be questions in your interview. So,
Hmm.
Evidence Act, be it your Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. So, these acts, and then again, let's come to the substantive law. So,
Mhm.
like, let's say if there's contract law, constitution is very, very important. So,
Right.
these are certain. So, when you're starting your preparation, and even if you're in a law school and you're thinking of preparing or giving appearing for these exams, you have to have your basics clear. So, constitution, this is a non-negotiable. These are certain basic topics which you have been studying since 5 years or 3 years, depending on whichever course you've opted for. So
Right.
these are certain things that you have to make sure that your basics are very clear from day one. After that, there might be two or three additional new topics which you can cover in a month or two. Also, when you've been preparing for a legal exam, you sort of know how to read the bare acts. You understand the legal jargon. And once you're thorough with the substantive and procedural law from the basics, it's very easy to learn the new topics or
Yeah.
new acts. Right. Your grasping power increases with that. So even though there were new additions in the exam bank syllabus, I did not panic because my basics were very clear. My CRPC, my IPC, all of that were clear. In 2024 the new laws came. I learned what were the new additions here as well. So A, don't panic, and B, once you understand the how law talks to you, the basic legal jargon, it will be easy for you to learn that.
Think very, very practical and very important points pointed out, Shubhangi. And I'll repeat
Sure.
for the benefit of the listeners over here. When you're looking at a syllabus, and that's where I started this
Hmm.
conversation rather than the exam pattern, because it's very important to understand how to approach a particular syllabus. And
Correct.
in legal, you can always divide it into your laws, which are your base, they form the base. And this is something that you've been doing throughout your education, your
Right.
constitution, your criminal laws, your civil laws, your torts, certain other procedural laws, your contract, where your basics should be very, very, very clear. And there's no legal exam that will not test you on this. And
Correct.
everything else will change and will be tweaked a little according to the organization. If it's RBI, they will focus on banking regulation. They will add banking regulations,
Exactly.
banking laws. If it's an insurance company like NICL, OICL, they will add insurance laws. If it is SEBI, they will add securities law. If it is EXIM, they are also adding certain banking and a combination of banking and securities law that can be there. And if you go with that approach, no syllabus will feel daunting,
Correct.
and you will be prepared to take advantage of various opportunities sometimes that may come your way which you had not thought of. So that
Right.
could be a great approach. So thanks, Shubhangi, for actually bringing out those nuances today. So now let's come to the more basic questions. Exim Bank's exam pattern is a little different. So just
Right.
to tell the certain users who may not be aware, there is no objective paper for the legal. Plus, this is an exam that is focusing totally on your legal paper. They do not have aptitude subjects where, like in various other legal exams like PFRDA, NICL, even No, RBI also does not have. RBI also focuses on legal and English only, but they do have an MCQ portion, small portion, but they do have, right? But there are various exams like SEBI, insurance exams, banking exams, IBPS, and all, which will also test you on the aptitude subjects like quant, reasoning, English, general awareness, and all, which may not be your forte. But this is one exam that focuses only on legal, in addition to RBI, which also focuses on legal paper and is descriptive in nature. Um, in that, EXIM Bank is one exam that has 100% descriptive paper. In that case, how was your approach different? And how did you go ahead preparing for a descriptive paper vis-a-vis another paper, which may have the same syllabus, but the way they ask is very different?
Correct. So, ma'am, since I was working for 2 years and I had completely lost touch with the legal subjects. So when I actually started preparing again after leaving my job, my goal was very clear that I had to prepare for SEBI. So
Mhm.
in SEBI also there is a section where they ask descriptive questions.
Right.
So from day one, I had inculcated along with, and I had also, I've been associated with ixamBee since the November of 2024. So I did not leave my mock tests for the very end. So even before I prepared nothing. I gave a mock just to understand what are the kinds of questions that will come. And while giving that first mock, before preparing anything, just to get an idea, as in, because I just can't study, I can't start studying from anywhere for anything. You
Mhm.
have to have an end goal. You have to
Right.
know your enemy first, that what are you going against? Okay,
Mhm.
what is it that is exam actually demands. So it's
Right.
very important for you to understand what will be the kind of questions that will come. Now, in this time, I had no idea about exam. I was focusing on SEBI itself. While giving that mock test, I realized that okay, they also ask for descriptive questions as well. So now I always had this in my mind that anytime in any exam, along with MCQs, descriptive questions can be asked. So you
Mhm.
also have to be aware of your surroundings and all the exams that are happening and the change which is coming in different exams. So these descriptive questions are being added in different exams as well. So
Yeah.
from the day one, I was very clear that okay, if I'm studying a topic, I will highlight points for my MCQs that okay, this is something. So basically, you have to think like an examiner. You
Mhm.
don't have to study like a student, and you have to study in a way that you have to clear this exam. Okay, so my approach was a I will, whenever I'll study a topic, I'll study it with the mindset of that, okay, this is something which can be asked in descriptive as well, and
Mhm.
it can be asked in MCQ as well. So for every topic, I would just highlight with an highlighter, okay, this is something which can be asked in MCQ. And if let's say there's a topic which can be asked in a descriptive question as well, I would not write per se, but in my mind think that, okay, this is how I will write it. Have an introduction, I'll have a body, and then this is how I will conclude it. So from day one, my preparation was in this manner. And when in March of 2025 the notification for exam came out, I was very happy that okay, this is something which I have been preparing for from day one. Although it was for SEBI's descriptive part, but this is something which will help me here as well. And while giving in mocks, again, you have to type in your answers. For giving the English descriptive, again, you have to type in.
Yeah.
So good, like a month or even less than a month, a good practice of typing, and just you just have to be comfortable with the interface
Yeah.
and the computer system. You just have to be familiar with it. But if you have good understanding of okay, that am I going to explain this topic in descriptive, you're good to go.
Right. So I think that's another few again good points that I'll add over here. It's
Hmm.
always very important to understand the exam requirement. So whenever you set out to target a particular exam, please understand the exam pattern, the previous year papers very, very well, because that gives you an accurate insight into how you can structure your preparation. Because again, the syllabus can be vast, the law is vast, but
Yeah.
how you talk through that law is where the difference starts coming in. And I think it's a very, very good approach. Um, to look at when you're looking at a particular content, a law or an act that you are studying, to be able to understand how it will flow in a descriptive manner. And of course, for MCQs, factual information that you'll have to remember
Right.
in your mind so that you can use it for the MCQ purpose. So I think that comprehensive understanding of the law went a long
Yeah.
way for you, Shubhangi. And very rightly said, there are a lot of exams that are now adding a descriptive part. SEBI has added it partly at the phase two level, not at the
Right.
phase one level. So around 30% of your legal paper happens in the descriptive format. If we talk about RBI legal, majorly is again descriptive. Out of 150, 120 is descriptive actually from the legal paper, apart from descriptive English. And like I already told you, EXIM is 100% descriptive in the legal paper. And but in the previously also not the legal paper, we've seen in various exams, they do test your writing skills. If not for legal specifically, they will test it in a descriptive English format. So
They
they will
do.
have a small descriptive English paper where you have to write an essay or some other question, where again your writing skills are being tested. So it's always a good thing to start from day one, practicing how you can structure that. So great advice, Shubhangi, again. Shubhangi, one more thing I'll touch on in the EXIM Bank is that within the paper itself, they divide the paper into two parts. One is mandatory, 40, and it's a bulk. It's a good amount of marks that they're talking about, 40% and 40 marks, which is mandatory, where you will not get any choice. After that, you get another list of questions from which you get a relatively some choice to do. So it can always be scary. What if I don't know that particular act which is asked in the mandatory part and it's a good 40 marks? So what? How can one go ahead uh, preparing for such kind of setups?
So, ma'am, this was again the first time this pattern had come up. Even I had no idea. So, it was a little daunting initially for me as well because there were so many topics, and even RBI Act, Banking Regulation Act felt important to me. At the same time, securities law also felt important to me. But then there was Constitution as well, there was Companies Act as well. Everything felt very important at that point. And then I was thinking that, okay, will 40 marks have a combination of different topics, or will 40 marks be from one topic itself? So there was a lot of confusion for sure. But then, since I had been preparing for this exam, for legal exams in general, so I was very confident that, okay, even if a topic, a question comes up, and it actually did happen with me in the exam as well. I did not know the exact language or what the exact legal terms for that, but for an answer, I explained it in my own language. So I wrote the answer, I explained with whatever understanding I had of that one topic. So, and considering that I've cleared it, I'm assuming that they did accept that answer. So basic understanding you have to have for every topic which is there in your syllabus. My suggestion would be, don't skip any topic, even if you're not very thorough it. At least have a basic understanding, because if it was a situational based question, like what will you do in this situation? So in that you don't have to mention section number or sections. Basically, it was a situation, it was from Companies Act, and I had to answer that, okay, will the director be allowed to give a loan or not? So because I had a basic understanding, I was able to explain that in my own language. Right. So this was one approach where don't skip anything 100%. Have a basic idea of everything that is there in your syllabus. And number two, for part one, what my understanding is that they are going to ask questions from a bulky topic. So don't skip the bulky topics, like don't skip BNSS, don't skip Companies Act, don't skip Constitution. And in if you want to skip, then first of all, don't skip any topic 100%. But if you just want to take an overview, let's say principles of natural justice, it is something you've studied it long before, you don't want to revise it on the last day, but you just have a basic understanding. So in the next part, which is of 30 marks, wherein you will have options to attempt 3 out of 8 questions. So there you will get options to leave certain topics. And primarily what I experienced from this exam was that those small topics like jurisprudence or small topics like res judicata, they were in the optional section. But the bulkier topics like Companies Act, criminal laws, they were in the first section. So don't focus the entire, like don't skip any bulky topic and have a general understanding of the entire syllabus.
Makes sense, I think. And because it's a mandatory, it's very higher probability
Hmm.
is from your, like we said, there's the basic laws in the sense
Right.
or substantive laws that you do study in
Hmm.
college also. It's a part of your degree. There's a higher likelihood that organization specific or industry specific area of laws are not asked in the mandatory while they can be tested there. So there's a higher
Hmm.
probability, can be 100% sure, but this, as you said,
Right.
bulkier topics or the most common, like you
Hmm.
cannot study law without knowing criminal laws. You cannot study law without knowing constitution. So it's
Correct.
likely that these will always remain important.
Hmm. Hmm.
So sure, thanks Shubhangi for this approach. Um, you mentioned that you had been associated with iXamBee since 2024, and your journey actually started with SEBI in mind.
Yes.
So, how has your experience been in terms of preparing with the help of the platform, if at all it was useful?
Ma'am, I am immensely grateful for iXambi because after leaving my job, I was starting from the scratch again. It had been almost 2 years of gap from law school to coming back, like to study again, to start preparing again. And I desperately needed a structure. So I am someone I can prepare by myself. I was very clear that I will not join a coaching institution as in a physical class or something. I don't want to waste any time. I was very clear about two things that I want an online study material or online guidance, anything. And the second thing is I want to start my preparation in a very structured approach. And that is where iXambi, I did my research from various different platforms. I went to Reddit, talked to a few friends who were still preparing, my friends from law school. So most of them suggested for iXambi. And that is when I bought the study material for SEBI Grade A. The great thing about the study material is that the sectional division is very nice. Then there are section tests, there are MCQ tests, there are descriptive tests. You also have important case laws, and then you have full fledged like good 10 mock tests for phase one, and then good amount of mock tests for phase two. So it gives you a platform where you can, if you want to, you can do your completely holistic preparation from your home, very reasonable costing. I was very happy with that because I was, so for that I had saved my money from my job, and my goal was very clear that I'm not going to take any money from my home. I, since it was my decision to leave a job and prepare for this, so iXambi was very affordable, very helpful. There were continuously live classes as well. So I was not constantly being a part of that live classes, but if let's say there's one topic which I think I'm weak at, I can always look at the timetable, attend that class, and go for it. So Exambi has helped me in clearing not just exam, but I did clear PFRDA phase 1, 2, and reached the interview stage. I have cleared SEBI phase 1, and I will be appearing for phase 2 in on February 21st. So every exam that I've given, I've cleared it, and I owe a large part of my success to Exambi.
Thank you, Shubhangi, for candidly saying it out. And it gives us immense pleasure when we see students being able to uh, use the material to the best advantage. Uh,
Yes.
and thanks. And I hope it resonates with various other candidates who are looking to make a career in the
Hmm.
legal space in various bodies that exams come out with. So, Shubhangi, moving to the next stage, a very, very important stage is the
Yes.
interview.
Yes.
Uh, in EXIM, it has even higher weightage with almost 30% weightage coming for the interview itself. So, how does one prepare for the interview? You had mentioned, if the questions are not asked in the written, they can very well be asked in the
Yes.
interview. So, how was your experience of the interview and what all were you tested on in the interview?
So for my interview preparation, since I had already given PFRDA grade A's interview, and I did not do well in that. And it was the first time that I was giving any interview for a government job.
Government
So I
job.
had cleared previously, I was working in a private multinational company, but there the interview, they're usually on a Zoom call, they're very normal, very casual, the way you behave, the way you say. And then in PFRDA grade A, when I went there were like five panelists and they were grilling you and they were asking so many questions. So that experience together in general helped me to understand. It gave me a base that,
Mhm.
okay, a lot of people told me that interviews are, they'll only see your personality, they won't test your knowledge. That is the biggest lie. They will test your knowledge, they will test whatever have you written, are you able to articulate that. But they will, you have to revise all the important points before an interview. You can, I skipped so many topics in PFRDA's interview because I thought they're going to look at me, my personality, they're going to talk to me. But no, what were we talking about was law. They were asking, what will you do in this situation? They were asking me straight up section numbers. Okay, they wanted to see that how do I handle a situation, but it's always better if you handle that situation and you know the answer as well.
Hmm.
So for before exam bank's preparation, I again gave a mock interview with ixamBee. I think it was with Indrani ma'am. I gave an interview. Yes, I gave a mock interview with her, wherein she again filled in some gaps. She told me that there were certain topics which I was not prepared for. She told me what topics to prepare on. I worked on those topics, and I kept on. I used, now this is again, I used Chat GPT a bit because that again really helped me because I would just ask Chat GPT to prepare questions that can be possibly asked to me. So after that mock interview, and I did use AI a lot in basically understanding that, create many questions. What do you think can be asked to me, or what questions can be asked from my profile? So this was how I prepared for it. Now coming to the day of my interview day, so it was in Mumbai. Uh, there were 15 people who had qualified for the interview, and 7 to 8 were in Mumbai, and half of them were in Delhi. So there were two different locations where interview were being conducted. My reporting was at 9 a.m. in the morning. I reached the location, and so we were made to sit and fill some preliminary forms and everything. After that, we were called for an interview one by one. My chance was I think second or third, so I was pretty pumped up. So when I went in there, again it was a huge hall. There were three panelists, and that's when the interview began. So panelist A, so the first panelist was basically regarding the HR questions. So he would ask about yourself, your family background, your why do you want to join exam, and basic behavioral questions. The other panelist was the head of the legal team, and her questions were primarily related to now cross-border insolvency, IDC Act, RBI Act, and then how will my previous work experience. So my previous work ex was related to anti-money laundering, KYC. How is that going to help?
Hmm.
And then the third panelist asked me very situational based, very difficult questions. But because of my preparation, previous interviews, and ChatGPT, I was able to answer every single question. There were questions on arbitration. There were questions on party basic international trade law principles. That he asked me, what do you have to say about governing law? So I said, sir, governing law is, again, that's when the concept of party autonomy comes into picture. If
Hmm.
there are two different parties, they can in between decide which law will govern them. So these are very uh, situational based questions which the third panelist asked me. My interview went about for good 30 minutes. There was constant back and forth. They were giving you time to think. If they
Mhm.
were telling me that, okay, we know this is a difficult question,
Hmm.
the panel was very cordial. They gave me time to think, and I was somehow able to answer all of them. So it's very important for you to revise the entire syllabus again before your interview, and do practice in speaking in front of people. Use everything, like use ChatGPT, use AI in creating more. See, the more questions you'll read, the
Right.
more you'll understand, and then in your head you'll prepare. So even on my flight when I was there, I was just going through the questions that, okay, what if they ask me this? How will I answer that? And it's a process. You just have to keep practice.
Right. Right.
Practice, yes.
Very, very important. I think very valid points, Shubhangi. So, I think your experience of the past interview and how you prepared and how you used the tool, AI tool, to your
Yes.
advantage, I think is great. And I'll add a few points over here. While like how you started, people may say, they're testing your personality and all. If I say it in my finance language, that's the underlying asset on which the derivative of your interview is
Yes.
built. So to explain that, yes, your personality is getting tested. That does not mean that they will not ask technical questions. So
Correct.
the problem comes when people misinterpret. Like in legal, it can be very dangerous to misinterpret the law. In the same manner, the mentor's advice, if misinterpreted, can be
Hmm.
very, very dangerous. So when people say that personality will not be tested, or they will look at your personality and technical doesn't matter, I think there's a misinterpretation of the statement. Your personality will definitely be tested, but it will not be tested by asking you what your personality is.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So that get tested in how you answer. And of course, the questions will be technical in nature, will be related to your subject. They're not going to just talk about it and discuss weather with you. They will discuss what they are going to test you on. So technical, you have to prepare. And on the second side, why personality matters is because if you don't have that in mind, you will only focus on the technical and you will forget to
Hmm.
practice speaking.
Correct.
Because a student's approach usually is, if they're going to test me on technical, they have been preparing for an exam. And how you retain in your mind and how you speak can be very different without practice. So
Right.
that's where the two will differ. So you will have to be absolutely no second thoughts on the fact that your technical will be tested, but they will be tested in an application based manner. They will be tested in a manner to see how you think, how you retain, how you understand your technicals, as compared to just knowing the technicals. So I think that's very, very important. And yes, panels are always cordial. They will, if you are making a genuine effort, they will always give you time. It's not like a rapid fire happening there to scare you. They will always make you comfortable. And I think, Shubhangi, you did a great job. And also touch on the point, a very, very strong point that Shubhangi mentioned. Please use we live in an era where we have access to great technology, AI being the latest addition to that, and you have that at your disposal. Use it wisely, and it can be used very, very well. You can create more questions for practice, and
Hmm.
using AI does not mean an effort has not gone, because sometimes that mindset that, if it is artificial intelligence, it is artificial. It is not, it is artificial, but that does not make it fake and incorrect. But you'll have to use it like technology and not like, the end statement or the concluding part. So you'll always have to make effort to correct it. You'll always have to make effort to use it to your advantage. Uh, so I think beautifully used, Shubhangi, and a combination of your effort, your technology, your practice, your focus on
Yes.
the aim has brought you here. And I'm sure you will do wonders wherever you go. And
Thank you,
wishing
ma'am.
you all the best for your future. Shubhangi,
Thank.
anything else you would want to add before we conclude?
Yes, ma'am. So, one key to clearing any exam that you're appearing for, I used to read this quote or this one word, consistency, everywhere. I used to think that okay, any interview that I talk to, everyone is talking about consistency, but I think this is one thing which will set you apart from the crowd because, ma'am, any center which I went to, there were thousands and thousands of children appearing for these exams, and it was so the exam centers are the most intimidating part because everyone looks so well prepared. But the one thing which will it's not luck, it's not what other advantages you have. It is consistency. So even on days because after leaving your job, you're just like why am I doing this? Why am I even studying? After the initial motivation will be there for a month or two. After that, you have to tell yourself why you're doing this. So even if I didn't feel like studying at all, I would still wake up. I will like even the night before I would tell myself, okay, these are the topics that I'm going to do tomorrow. Even if I'm not completing 100% of those topics, I'll try to reach 60, 70%. And that consistency is something which kept me motivated all along and helped me in clearing these exams. So there's no substitute for that.
Great advice again, Shubhangi. I'm so glad to hear this in a practical form because, yes, it's so easy,
Hmm.
so simple, consistency, and sometimes it feels okay, how is it? Is it so simple? But actually, practically, it's the most difficult thing to live by. And great advice, Shubhangi. Consistency does take you a long way. And thanks for that great advice to the future aspirants or whoever is listening to this. I'm sure they will take inputs and make their preparation even further stronger after listening to you. So thanks again, Shubhangi. And
Thank
as I
you, ma'am.
said, wishing you all the best. I'm sure you will always do well in the future.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.